Welcome, everybody. My name is Kyle DeBell, and today we are going to be talking about Chicago style and just kind of breaking down how it works and how to use it. Um, so with this presentation, we're just going to be primarily focusing on how to create footnotes and how to create their corresponding bibliographic entries. But we will get into the minutia of all that. So let's begin. All right, so by the end of this presentation, you should be able to do a few things. You should be able to create a footnote or endnote. We'll talk about that in a minute. You should be able to create its corresponding bibliographic entry. And you should be able to locate the citation assistance page on our LibGuides homepage. So by the end of this presentation, you should be able to do all three of those things, and hopefully we can get that set up. So I will be distributing an asynchronous activity. I'm going to be distributing it to your professors, and but we will get more into that. But as with anything else in life, especially when it comes to citation styles, it's all about practice. The more you practice, the better chances you are going to have of understanding it and using it correctly. It's very easy to incorrectly cite things. And it takes a lot of practice to be able to catch those little things that can really get you on a paper. So. So what is Chicago style? Simply put, it's the style of citation used primarily for the publication of historical books, journal articles, things like that. It's also used for a lot of other humanities-based disciplines, religious studies, philosophy, um, things of that nature. You don't really need to know too much about its origins. Really, you're focusing more on how it works, right? When it comes to origins in history, you're wanting to learn more about that kind of stuff, right? For citation style guides, you really just need to know how they work. But it was originally developed at the University of Chicago, hence the name Chicago style. That's just a little bit of background about Chicago style. So sometimes the hardest part of citation with whatever style you've been tasked to use, sometimes it's just kind of knowing where or when uh, to cite, right? Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing as to when you are supposed to cite something, right? Simply put, in my mind, citation really begins when your ideas end. Um, all that really means is if you are paraphrasing an idea from another work, if you are quoting, if you are borrowing ideas from another work, you need to cite those sources, right? Um, this really just amounts to the importance of, you need to give credit to uh, the author, right? Um, you know, um, Kind of an extreme example, but something that, like let's say you become an archaeologist, right? And let's say you're on this dig and you and your crew have been at it for years and years and years. Um, you discover something that just kind of turns the world of archaeology, on its head, right? And then you publish your findings. Well, what if someone came along and just completely copied verbatim your findings and tried to present your findings as their own, right? You wouldn't be too happy about that. Simply put, because that was your hard work. Those were your findings, right? So again, that's a little bit of an extreme example, but it's the same idea. You want to give credit where credit is due. And so really that's kind of why it's so important to cite and to know when to cite. So yeah, so we will go ahead and move on from there. So yeah, so there's really kind of two styles of Chicago style citation. You have author date and notes and bibliography. Now, at Young Harris College, we use notes in bibliography, right? We use footnotes, endnotes, and their corresponding bibliographic entries. We do not use author date. I probably should have emphasized that more on this slide, but I wanted to at least present to you um, the two styles so you know the difference, right? Um, so yeah, so again, we do not use author date at Young Harris College. We do, however, use notes and bibliography. So do keep that in mind. Um, all right, so very briefly, I just want to kind of show you the author date style. Um, It's sort of similar to APA, I find. So if you've had a communications class or a psychology class that has required you to cite in APA, it's a little bit similar to that. But again, just wanted to show you the difference. We use notes bibliography here at Young Harris. So again, just wanted to make you aware. Um, but there you have it. Uh, Something that I wanted to point out real quick. I think uh, VoiceThread is scrunching up my PowerPoint, so I apologize if letters seem to be misplaced. But I don't know what's going on. Maybe once this is completely recorded, it might change. I don't know. Just wanted to make you aware that I am aware of that. It's not just gross negligence on my part. Um, so a little bit about basic formatting. Your font should be set to Times New Roman. You definitely want you want your paper to be double spaced for the entire work. Um, the only thing I forgot to include in this presentation is a bit on the actual cover page of your paper. However, if you go to Purdue OWL, which I will talk about towards the end of this presentation, they cover that pretty extensively, and the cover page isn't too hard to do. That will also talk about page numbering and pagination and stuff like that. So what I really wanted to focus on was the actual footnotes and their bibliographic entries. Um, so yeah, and then of course, bibliographic entries, you have to have hanging indents with those. I will show you how to do that here in a second. Okay, so to use hanging indents in Microsoft Word, you simply click on the Home tab of a Word doc, and then you go down to this little paragraph symbol right here where it says paragraph, and then to the right of that, you're going to see that little symbol. You're going to click that. All right, so yeah, so once you have that little uh, box open, you are going to change this part over here to hanging. You want to make sure that it's spaced by 0.5, and you're definitely, again, you're going to want to make sure that your line spacing is double spaced. After that, you simply click OK, and your hanging indent should at that point be applied. All right, so these are just a couple examples of the notes bibliography style. Again, you should have a footnote, and then the footnote will correspond with a bibliographic entry in the actual bibliography, right? Um, so a lot of the examples that I'm going to go over have both the footnote and what it's supposed to look like as a footnote, and then what it's supposed to look like as a bibliographic entry. If you are using Microsoft Word, when you use insert footnote, you will have to make sure that that it's a continuous numbering sequence, right? You know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, on and on and on. But yeah, but we'll get into that in a minute. I've noticed with this slide, again, my formatting seems to be a little bit off. Hopefully my subsequent slides don't look like this. They should be all right. So basically what we got going on here is, again, we have our footnotes, and then we've got the bibliographic entries on the bottom of the slide. This right here, the only thing that's supposed to be in italics is just the title. This right here is not supposed to be in italics, but I will kind of show you more about that in a minute. So yeah, we'll move on. Okay, so yeah, so when inserting footnotes, you want to make sure that you go to the references section in the Word doc, and then you want to go down to where it says insert footnote. And yeah, so when you do that, it will then insert the little superscript number, and then the footnote entry will actually be at the bottom of the page. You can set this to EndNote, but we'll talk a little bit more about EndNotes here in a minute. One other thing I do want to point out is, see right here where it says insert citation. I didn't really fully circle it. And then you can choose the style. So what that allows you to do is you can actually put in the bibliographic information, and then it will create a citation. Now, the only problem with this is that we are now on the 17th edition of Chicago Style. Microsoft Word, as of right now, only has the 16th edition. So you want to make sure you avoid this. I would just simply, just do it manually. I know it's a little bit more of a pain to do, but it will definitely save you a lot of heartache when it comes to getting your paper back, right? So yeah. But yeah, again, you just want to go to references, you want to go to insert footnote, and then you keep doing that. Now, the big thing that you'll want to remember is with footnotes, and I know the formatting doesn't really show it, but with footnotes, you want to make sure that the notes are spaced about 5 spaces, right? And then each subsequent line is flushed left, okay? But once we get more into the slides, I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. But again, you want to make sure that your footnotes are at least 5 spaces. But we will get more into that here in a minute. So. All right, so with footnotes, I'm sorry, with endnotes, they work the exact same way. You want the same exact formatting. You want, 0.5 spaces. You want all that. The only difference is that the endnotes appear at the end of your paper rather than at the bottom of each page with the footnotes that you used. So yeah, that's the biggest difference. But formatting wise, they're the same. Now, in a Chicago style paper, the endnote section is going to come before your bibliography. So do keep that in mind. But yeah, again, endnotes work the same way. They just come at the end of your paper rather than in the actual body of the paper, right? Now, whether you use endnotes or footnotes is largely going to depend on what your professor says, right? So always be clear as to what your professor wants, right? Some of your professors will want endnotes, some of them will want footnotes, some of them may even let you choose. It really just depends on who's teaching the particular class and what they expect out of you guys with regards to the assignment. So, all right, so we are now getting into the basics of the citations themselves. And yay, my PowerPoint kept its formatting, so I am very happy about that. So yeah, a couple of things here. So what I have going on is the the footnote or endnote, and then the corresponding bibliographic entry. So from here on out, each slide is going to have an N for footnote and then a B for bibliography or bibliographic. So a couple things. Now with your footnote, it's always going to be the first name, last name, the title of the book in italics, place of publication within parentheses, colon, year of publication, close parentheses, and the page number, right? Uh, the specific page number or page range that you are citing from, right? Um, and then of course, you then have to make your corresponding bibliographic entry. So now it's a little bit of the inverse. There's a couple things that are different. Now this time you are putting the last name first and the first name. Now in the bibliography, you want to make sure that your sources are in alphabetical order by last name. When it comes to multiple authors, we will get to that in a few slides, but when it comes to multiple authors, you don't necessarily have to do them in alphabetical order. You have to rely, or I'm sorry, you do have to do them more in order of appearance of the author in the book or the journal article, but we will get more into that in a minute. So there you have it, really. That's kind of the basic skeletal structure of what a footnote and a bibliographic entry looks like. Yeah, so this is how you cite a book with one author. Pretty straightforward, and again, I mean exactly how I showed you in the previous slide. Um, you'll notice that with the footnote, you've got the specific page that that person cited, and then of course the bibliographic entry doesn't have to have that because you are just citing the source that you, or I'm sorry, you are placing the bibliographic entry of the source that you used in your paper. So that's just like a little example of that. All right, so here's the deal with shortened citations. So when you are citing from a particular work, every subsequent citation after your original citation from a particular work will be shortened. In other words, you don't have to type out the full footnote each time you are citing from the same source. So that's good because it saves you a lot of work, right? So if you look at my example over here, we've got the full citation of this book, right? And then the next citation is from the same source, but now it's just the last name of the author, a shortened title of the work, followed by the page range in this particular instance. Sometimes that's one page, sometimes that might be a few pages. So yeah, a little note real quick on this whole idea of IBID or IBID. Some of you may be familiar with this concept. This used to be the rule of thumb. Whenever you were using shortened citations, if you're using multiple citations from the same work, you would shorten your citation to IBID. With the Chicago Manual of Style 17th edition, that is no longer encouraged. Now the rule is you only use the IBID when that particular citation is referring to the last item cited, right? So let's say you have Foner Fiery Trial, page 43, right? And then let's say your very next citation, let's say like you're quoting, right? Like let's say you are using a particular quote, but it's from the same exact page to, maybe drive home like a point, right? Then you would use IBID, okay? But if you are using if you're using shortened citations, and if they're not referring to the last item cited, then you will want to just use the shortened citations and not IBID. So again, IBID is no longer encouraged, but you only use it when you're referring to the last item cited. Okay. If you ever have any confusion about that, talk to your professor, and of course, you're obviously welcome to talk to us in the library as well. But that does seem to be the general rule of thumb. Yeah, so that is just a little aside on shortened citations. All right, so yeah, books by multiple authors works the same way as you would with a single authored book, but the exception being is that now you have multiple authors, right? Um, so yeah, so in this particular case, we have two, right? With your footnote, it's going to be first name, last name. With your bibliographic entry, that's going to be the inverse, right? Your last name and then your first name. And this works the same way with journal articles as well. If you have multiple authors, you're going to want to put all the authors. One thing to keep in mind, they do not have to be in alphabetical order. However, it is basic practice to put them in the order that they appear in the book. So for example, if you get to the title page of a book, it gives you its title, and then right below it, its authors. Whatever order those authors appear, that's how you want to cite it, right? Now with the bibliographic entry, your um, you want your bibliographic entries to be alphabetical, but that's going to be based on the first letter of the first name within that bibliographic entry. But with the footnote, you want, well, with the footnote and the endnote, you want authors to appear in the order that they actually appear in. But the bibliographic entry is going to be based on just alphabetical order, right? Um, so yeah, but so that's how books by multiple authors work. All right, and if you are citing from a chapter, from a particular chapter in a single authored book, you do it simply like this. Now, with this time around, the title of the chapter is going to be in quotations. By the way, this is going to be very similar to how journal articles work, which I think a lot of you are probably going to be using journal articles for your papers. But yeah, so this is really for if maybe an author has released like a book, like a collection of essays. That works very similar to how edited books work, and I'll show you how edited books work in a minute. But you may be inclined sometimes to cite from a particular chapter rather than the book as a whole, right? Um, again, that a lot of the times that comes down to like if it's like a collection of essays, right? Like if it's a book that has one cohesive idea, right? Like if it's a history book that presents a thesis and then that whole book explains or backs that thesis or that argument, then you would cite as you would regularly cite a book, right? But if it's like a book with multiple different essays on different topics, um, then at that point, you'd probably want to cite from a particular chapter, because each chapter theoretically is going to be dealing with a different thread, a different idea or concept or philosophy or what have you. So there are times where citing from just one particular chapter is acceptable, right? And this is, essentially how you do it. So yeah, that's a little bit on citing from chapters from single authored books. Okay, so how to cite books with authors and editors. So in the footnote or endnote, you will want to abbreviate the word editor. If it's a singular editor, you want to abbreviate it to just ed period, or if it's multiple editors, you would want to abbreviate to eds period. The bibliographic entry, you spell it all out. There is no abbreviation with editor at that point. So that's a little bit on how to cite books with authors and editors. All right, so citing journal articles. I would imagine that most of you are probably going to be using journal articles in your papers. We do teach here at Young Harris College the importance of scholarly peer-reviewed journal articles. Yeah, so there are a couple of common threads. The good news about any citation style is that after a while, um, there's a lot of similarities, but some of the differences can get kind of minute. And that's what really tends to trip a lot of people up. Um, yeah, so with footnotes, you'll want your first name, your last name, again, very similar to how you would a book. The title of the journal article in quotations, and the title of the journal publication in italics. Along with the volume number, you'll want the volume number in italics as well. I know I did not put that in this slide, and I apologize. Followed by the issue number, then the year of publication, and then the page number. Page number was supposed to be up here, but I don't know what happened, so I do apologize. Now, with your corresponding bibliographic entry, of course, again, that's reversed, right? You want your last name, your first name, title of journal article in quotations, the title of the journal publication italicized along with the volume number and the year of and the issue number. I forgot to put the issue number right there. The year of publication, parentheses, close parentheses, colon, and then the page number range of the article itself, right? So if it's from page 25 to 55, you'll want to put that in there, right? And I'll show you what I mean by it. And so, yeah, as you can see, this is what a journal article will look like, both the footnote and the bibliographic entry. I can't tell if the 15 there is italicized, but again, the 15 is the volume number, then followed by the issue number right there. And again, this is what I meant by page range. Okay, this particular article only was one page, apparently. So yeah, so that's how you do journal articles. All right, and so this is how you do journal articles with multiple authors. Works kind of similar to books with multiple authors, but obviously with the formatting you're supposed to use for journal articles. We've got our footnote up here, and then of course our bibliographic entry down there. So yeah, so that's a little bit about how that works. Okay, so a note on DOIs. DOIs, or digital object identifiers, essentially link your journal article back to its database. So the reason why that I wanted to bring this up, and the reason why I didn't actually include it in one of my journal article examples, was because Some professors don't require it. Um, so when you are starting on an assignment, just make sure you ask first. But some professors do. So I wanted to just make you aware. Um, Best practice is probably to include the DOI, but again, always check with your professor first, and plan accordingly. So that is all there is on DOIs. All right, and now we come to web sources. Web sources, now there's going to be a lot of times that when you're trying to cite web sources that you're not going to get all the information that you would like, right? So the rule of thumb is to cite as much as you possibly can. So just some of the basics with your footnote, it's going to be the first name and last name of the author, if there is one, the title of the actual web page you are using, in quotations, followed by the name of the website, its publishing organization, again, if that information is available, um, either the date of publication or its revision date. And if you can't get those, then you use the date in which you accessed the web source. So yeah, and then down here you have the bibliographic entry. Again, cite as much as you can. If you're ever in doubt, ask your professor, or you can ask me or any of the other librarians. We'd be more than happy to help you. Web sources can be a little tricky, but once you get the hang of it, after a while, it's not too bad. But yeah. All right, and as you can see, with web pages with known author and date, you follow what we talked about in the previous slide, but you obviously put in the author's name. So yeah, with footnotes, what you'll want to do is it's pretty much the same as books and journal articles. In the footnote, first name, last name. In the bibliographic entry, last name, first name. And there you have it. And with the link, you leave the link there. It's a good rule of thumb to you'll have to ask your professor, but I find it's a good rule of thumb to usually not provide a hyperlink. So if you want to remove the hyperlink from the link, that's fine. Again, if you're unsure, ask your professor. Some of them may have different preferences. So that's how you cite a web page with a known author and date. All right, so this kind of goes back to the idea that with websites, you want to cite as much as you can. If you can't find the author, you just move on to the next pieces of important information. So here, I just really have the title, um, the publishing website, the date, and then the link, right? So yeah, so you want to just kind of follow this format. And again, a lot of times with websites, you're gonna come across websites where you don't get a lot of the same information. It's not as consistent as like a book or a journal article. But there you have it. All right, so yeah, again, more along the lines of what I've been talking about in the last couple of slides. Again, cite as much as you can. This is an example of a web page with an unknown publication date and author. So again, cite as much as you can. And also a good rule of thumb is to check with your professors as well, just to see if they kind of deem it as like for lack of a better phrase, like a worthy source. But yeah, so that's how you cite a web page with an unknown publication date and author. All right, and blogs. They work fairly similar with just websites, but you will want the author's name of the blog, the name of the blog entry in quotations, and the name of the blog itself in italics. If you do not see the word blog anywhere in the blog, you will simply put the word blog after the title in italics, but the word blog will be in parentheses, right? Um, so yeah, and again, you see the footnote with its corresponding bibliographic entry. That's how you do blogs. I did not include anything in this presentation on social media or podcasts. However, I do have that information in handouts, in Chicago style handouts that we made. Those are available in the library. I will make them available through your professors as well. So yeah, but I didn't want to get too bogged down in that stuff. But I figured that with blogs, there's a lot of good history and humanities-based blogs out there that are really good sources of information. So yeah, but that's how you cite blogs. All right, and so with bibliographies, you are going to want your bibliographic entries in alphabetical order by the first name of or the last name of the author that appears first in the particular citation or bibliographic entry. Footnotes refer to their order of use in the paper. That's why footnotes are there. You see a footnote, and then you can go down to you can go back to the source in question. Again, bibliographic entries do require hanging indent. For more information on this, Purdue OWL has a sample Chicago style paper that's extraordinarily helpful to look at as a model. So yeah, so that's just a little bit on the bibliography. All right, so I have provided activity an activity, excuse me. I did provide that to your professors. What I essentially want is I've given you 4 different um, uh, pieces of information. The information is all scrambled up, and what I want you to do is I want you to put the citation in their correct order, and I want you to give me a footnote for each entry. I want you to give me its corresponding bibliographic entry, and then I want you to tell me what type of source it is. Okay, so that will be the activity. And we will go from there. I'm going to leave it to the discretion of your professors as to how they want to distribute it, but you should be seeing that. And the reason why that I wanted to do this is because I can sit here and just talk about Chicago all day, but it really doesn't make sense until you actually do it yourself. So make sure you work on that. Um, Okay, so for further assistance with this stuff, of course, if you go to our LibGuides page, we do have a citation assistance tab. I have the links right here. I will also be providing this PowerPoint to your professors so they can distribute it to you and you can access it whenever you want. For more information on uh, Chicago, you simply click that link right there. You will see a drop-down menu on the citation assistance, but I just put the direct link to the Chicago page there. And then, of course, we have Purdue OWL. Purdue OWL really, truly is a wonderful source. It's always up to date as far as the editions of the manuals. So, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we are on the 17th edition. Um, so yeah, and that's really all I have for you. Thank you for taking the time to go through this. If you ever have any questions at all, my name is Kyle DeBell. I'm the instructional librarian. If you ever want to reach out to us, we have all of our contact information on our LibGuides page. And please feel free to either stop on by or email us, or you can even text us. We have a text messaging service. There's so many different ways you can get in contact with us if you don't want to contact us in person. But anyway, thank you guys so much, and I hope this was helpful. Take care. Bye-bye.